Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, how are you? Yes.
You'll have to forgive me. I'm kind of in a little bit of a noisy area. I'm in Hanoi, Vietnam right now. We're at an event and had to kind of pop over here. But thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll show you. Okay, we'll start now. If there are no questions from the floor, so we will start from our side now.
I'm Okatsu-san. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so just a question. This is Miles from TADS Awards as well. So another question for me. It's the same regulatory question that we asked other winners. So we think that regulatory issues needs to be addressed first in order for solutions to be used. And what do you think of the current regulation environment? Do you think it's improving in comparison to the past? And if so, what have you seen improved? What do you think needs to be improved, etc.?
Yeah, so regulations are, a very interesting topic, obviously, because they differ from region, to country. I think that we have certain governments that have been very supportive, like in Switzerland, even Singapore have been very supportive of tokenization efforts, essentially adopting these new decentralized technologies in these fields. But they're also very progressive in terms of the regulatory frameworks that are necessary in order to enable, I guess you could say, more average people to have access to these type of, products. And this is really the ultimate goal, right? To get the right products into the right people's hands. Now, if we talk about more broadly, the regulations around, sort of the identity and also the required checks for participating in some of these investments, to for example, to prove that you're an accredited investor in the US or a sophisticated investor in Europe. There's a pretty, those are already well-established processes, right? So there's nothing new. Whenever you sign up for an equities account in the US, you have to go through KYC. If you try to get onto like a early stage sort of peer-to-peer or crowdsourcing investment platform for early stage startups, then you have to go through the whole accredited investor check, etc. So these are just things that already exist. It's nothing new. Now, what's really interesting to me is I want to see, and this isn't really where we've come, but this is where I think that definitely the industry should be going, is where we can essentially embed into the contracts that are governing these products, the sort of regulatory or so automated regulation, if that makes sense. So if, for example, if I were to be presented with an opportunity to invest in a certain asset, then given my KYC information and they can determine, or the smart contract will actually have a verified sort of path of understanding my jurisdiction, where I live, my residence, and therefore can essentially automatically allow me to engage with that contract according to my local regulations, for example. So this is really, to me, where the power of these technologies comes out and shines, and the ability to do so. But what I really see is a long road before we're going to actually get to any type of legislation or regulatory environment that would help to facilitate this very tight-knit sort of connection in terms of the technologies that are available and the capabilities that we have with the sort of next generation investment products in the DeFi space, if that makes sense.
Understand. So when do you expect that that tokenization will be generalized?
Yeah, general. So tokenization, I think that there are so many different fields for understanding, how are we tokenizing assets, how are we tokenizing equities, instruments that are intended to be securities, etc. And so what I see is that we're starting kind of in areas where there's the low-hanging fruit, and people kind of consider this obviously to be, first of all, representing traditional equities and companies, and this is where the concepts of DAOs have sort of come about. But then also, and by the way, that's also kind of supported by you know, certain laws in certain jurisdictions. And then we get into like tokenizing, you know, real estate, for example. This requires a bit more because there are, you know, government registries that have to be integrated into the system for that to really be effective and sort of recognized by the laws of the countries that these type of instruments would be made available. So it's a really hard question because, again, when we talk about tokenization, there are so many different forms of this. And, you know, some things will be way slower to get into sort of mass adoption or even, you know, mass sort of more general approval than others, in my opinion. So I really couldn't say, is it going to be 2, 5? And I just wouldn't be able to answer that.
Understand. On behalf of our partners, do you have any plans to conduct localized business in Korea or for Korea specifically?
Yes, indeed, we are. So we're operational in Japan. We're operational in Vietnam. We're a Singapore entity. You know, right now we're getting the most traction in our first target market. You know, we really started our business and we're focused on executing here for our clients in Vietnam. So we're working, for example, with one of the largest insurance conglomerates here. We've got 2 banks coming on board. And we also have one of the largest telcos, you know, becoming part of the network here. So once we get a little more traction and we start to work out, you know, the kinks in the models, et cetera, through our experiences here and through delivering, then we're definitely looking to expand. We have actually, we haven't announced it yet, but so this will actually, I guess, be the kind of official announcement. We received an investment from a public IT or SI or sort of system integrator company in Japan. And they service the financial institutions there. So like Mitsubishi UFG, as well as like Sompo, to big insurance companies, et cetera. And they do have a pretty significant presence in Korea as well. So we could potentially leverage the relationship with them with that purpose, but we're always open to partnering. For example, we have a very good partner in the Philippines that's taking our technology there, and we're also integrating their technology and making it available here. So we have a very flexible sort of pluggable model where we can take, for example, alternative credit scoring. We can take, you know, adjunct to the KYC data in various systems to unlock that and make it available for individuals to utilize for onboarding to other services, for example. And so in that, given the pluggable nature of our technology, we do have the ability to cooperate a lot with industry players and then, you know, set up strategies that would help us to get exposure in you know, countries like Korea. And by the way, I've spent a lot of time in Korea. I love it. I actually speak a little Korean too. So it's definitely a very interesting and market for us, and we do intend to be active there at one point.
Hi, I'm Makoto. I have another question for you.
Okay,
congratulations,
yeah.
first of all, for winning the show. And
thank you.
So the question is, I see that Credify actually have a lot of scope in India. Like I work with the Indian government closely, and and they generally ask me for the solution in telecom industry and the banking. So one of the current partner we are working with is VerySmart.ai, but these are not someone who work in this domain particularly, as in like their needs are not matched yet. But I would like to know that if you are provided with a project of, for example, telecom or banking sector, and banking, if we talk about the Indian ICICI Bank, so they have certain requirement that they want your system to be plugged in with their system, like the technology has to be synced. And so will you be able to provide them, or you're just want to focus more on the plug and play model?
Yeah, so we do have essentially 2 models for deployments, and it really depends on the client, right? So, for example, we have very large conglomerates, and they're really wanting to sort of unify and allow sort of cross-selling, upselling of services between their group companies. In this case, these institutions are interested to deploy our entire protocol in their own environment. So that's like a full deployment, and then we customize certain aspects of it that make it more amenable to their needs. So we do have the ability to do that is with white labeling essentially. But it's a more costly approach. And I would say at the next phase too, we'll be able to connect these ecosystems. So right now we have a more sort of generic system where you're using, SaaS-based APIs to connect in and then engage with the network. But we're building it out to where you can actually have a fully, containerized ecosystem for like one group company, and then make that available externally to other ecosystems. So indeed, we do support that business model.
Okay. But in India, it's like you have to fill the tenders, and these projects are a government, so they are extremely huge in size. But they want to make sure
Yes.
that whatever the system they are using, you have to actually like give your team for like 5 months, 6 months, because it generally take this much amount of time to embed your system into that. But
Sure.
then how do you do the billing? How are you generating the revenue for Credify?
So the billing, I mean, in terms of this, so like with our existing customer that's doing white label solution, essentially the way it works is that we have like a one-off integration or development fee that we work with them. It might include customizations, etc. That's one-off, but then we have licensing, because obviously our full technology stack is being deployed in their environment, so the IP is sitting with them. So we have licensing, and then we've worked out other dynamics of the deals where when transactions are made in the system, there's a revenue share associated that if it's external to the ecosystem. So yeah, our standard revenue model, because we're really trying to focus more on the SaaS-based side of stuff, but again, given big opportunities and sort of broader scope, but that we feel is quite important for us in terms of building better access to these newer markets. Then in that case, we're very flexible.
Okay, thanks.